Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy David from the Free Play Mode, and I'm coming at you with the quick hit for May 28th, 2016. I want to wish you all a happy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully, you all have 3-day weekends so you can get your extra relax on. I'm joined by the CEO and founder of Tough Nerd Toys, Mr. Dene Shogeke. What's going on, brother?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Aaron. It's still morning. Good morning.
Yeah, we're still morning, wiping the crust out of our eyes, getting our
Yep.
morning coffee on, bro. But we got some huge gaming news, and first for this show, well, not first, we did it a long time ago, but we don't do it enough. We've got some comic book news because me and Danae feel that this is worth mentioning, and we're going to lead off with that. In case you've been living under a rock, both DC and Marvel launched their quote unquote reboot universes this week, and we're going to start with Marvel, beginning with Captain America Steve Rogers #1. Mr. Danae, what do you think of the shocking turn of events? Because we're going to spoil the fuck out of this for
Exactly.
everybody.
Exactly.
what
Exactly.
do
Because
you
I mean,
what do you
this was a
think,
call.
man?
This was a call to arms, and I went on Twitter. I went on Twitter, and everybody was up in arms about this. There's a big fiasco going on. I mean, like you would think there's more division with this than there was in Civil War. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm looking at it as though, for one, we all know it's all about sales if you want to look at it from an economical standpoint. And two, this is not the first time. And I understand where you were coming from, Mr. Aaron, but this is not the first time they've done this with Captain America. Because if you remember, during the time that Captain America was supposedly or allegedly frozen, there was another Captain America running around. And when the two finally met up with each other, one turned out to be a Nazi slash Hydra supporter,
Yeah,
and
that
he
was
turned
when
into
Captain America was U.S. agent, I believe.
no. It was actually when during the time. All right, if you go by the original Captain America stories, not including the Ultimate and Martin, the Ultimate Universe, pardon me, the Ultimate Universe, so on and so forth. There was a time when we all know the classic story of Captain America being frozen, Flash frozen in the whatever in the sea, so on and so forth. But during that time, there was still a Captain America continuum going on because everybody loved that character. But
Mm.
when they brought him back into, I think when they when they unfroze Captain America and they brought him back into the mainstay of comics, they took that Captain America that was existing for a while and they made him into a villain, whereas though he was an imposter, and he turned out to be like the super Nazi, or I forgot because I read it so many years ago when I was a kid, but I remember it. And you saw it was two Captain Americas fighting, and one turned out to be the one that we were exposed to that whole time. The way they wrote him into the stories that he was a Nazi operative with that was a sleeper cell. Then when they awakened him, he ended up being like the super Nazi or something like that. But it's not like, to make a long story short, it's not the first time this has happened. It's
Yeah,
not the first time this happened.
yeah, but according to the story, as you stated, that person was not Steve Rogers. Like the Steve Rogers that existed in the original Captain America, because that's what they're making this one out to seem.
Right.
Like this joining Hydra goes totally against what Steve Rogers as a person stands for. And I understand why Marvel's doing it, because they like their Marvel Cinematic Universe and a television series, they're just kicking ass and they want to get the comic books up to speed. And quite honestly, since Civil War happened, Captain America has fallen back into that kind of lull that he was in after Heroes Reborn happened.
Yeah.
And he's not like a super important character in the Marvel universe. Like he's a central character, but he's kind of forgotten about in a way because they're taking the shift off of mutants in the Marvel comic book universe right now, and they're making it out like mutants are dying out, and now it's the rise of the Inhumans and stuff like that.
Right.
So I can understand why they want to do this to gin up controversy and have people talk about Captain America like we are now and get more comic book sales going. But I think this is a bad step. it's a step in the wrong direction. There are so many other ways you could have made Captain America edgy and more gritty and more dark than having doing this, because you have to remember the reason why Captain America was made was essentially because Kirby and Simon, they created this character back in early 1940s to, it was essentially American propaganda for World War II.
Right.
And he's supposed to be like the symbol of American exceptionalism and patriotism, and he's supposed to represent all the good core values that America is supposed to be. And then you have Hydra, which was essentially created to be a fictitious wing of the Nazis. And
Well, I mean, during the time, I mean, there were actual like, well, of course they have to be more politically correct now, but in the older comics, they were a direct derivative of from Nazis. They wouldn't like, they just usurped the Nazis in certain aspects.
right,
So
but ultimately Hydra was like a wing of the Nazis
right, of course, right,
during the initial. Then they broke off from the Nazis after World War II finished and
Right.
became their own entity, but it still maintained that kind of Nazi-ish feel to be kind of a enduring enemy that Steve Rogers / Captain America always had to fight, because as you know, a Hydra cut off one head to appear.
right.
So it's a long-lasting enemy, and it essentially goes against everything that Steve Rogers as a person believes and stands for. Not Captain America, because anybody can be Captain America.
Yeah, as we've seen down the timelines, I think we've had
The Punisher has been Captain America.
exactly right.
Uh,
We've had at least like 9 variations. No, yeah, like 9 variations of Captain America.
like Bucky Barnes has been
Bucky
Captain
Barnes,
America.
yep. Bucky Barnes,
Falcon
the
has
US
been Captain
Agent.
America. U.S. Agent has been Captain America. Like, so Captain America is a symbol, but Steve Rogers as a person,
And
that's-
bodies, yes, I
yeah.
understand where you're coming from. I understand completely, and I would agree. I agree with you on that. I
Like-
agree with you completely.
like I like what they did with Steve Rogers during Civil War, because that was a way to make Steve Rogers as a character more edgy and more gritty without going against what he stood for. Like, even though he was against the ideals of what Tony Stark and ultimately SHIELD stood for,
Right.
it didn't go against the values and beliefs of Steve Rogers as a person. So maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll explain it more as it goes on, but I don't think this is the direction that they should take Captain America in. I'll read it anyway just to see where it goes.
Read it, miss. Read it. You trust me. I think you will appreciate the storyline, because to me, it's back to classic gritty Marvel. It's what I grew up really reading, and I'm one to always give anything a chance. So with this, I'm going to see where it goes, and then I'll just be like, you know what? No, or either be like, guess what? Turned out better than what I thought it would. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna
give it a chance. Trust me when I tell you. Because I remember it was one book you suggested to me, and I was completely like, no. And when I read it, I fell in love with it. What was it? I think you were
Powers.
Yes. And I read that book, and I was like, it was absolutely amazing. The writing in that book was anything short of excellent. I loved it.
All right, moving on from Captain America, we're going to move on to another timeless classic that everybody thought was going to be hotness due to Platinum Games' previous release of another timeless classic and the Transformers game, but this game right here is being universally panned, including by our Mr. Dene Shogeke. And I'm talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and for PC. So, Dene, man, I haven't played it. I was excited for it. Lay it out for everybody out there. What's going on with this game?
They can't recapture the arcade fun and the nostalgia that the ones that came out during the late 80s, early 90s embodied. And they're trying to, but I just feel as though they can't do it. Because with this right here, there's so many issues with this. Now one thing I've always loved about Platinum Games and their flashy combo driven high octane, like flashy visuals video games is the fact that within the confusion there's a sense of organization. Whereas though with this one, it's just all over the place. It's all over the place. It doesn't know if it wants to be a sandbox game. It doesn't know if it wants to be a linear action game. Or it's just all over the place. And the boss battles are great, but you cannot keep track of your character. Not to mention, it's not even running at 60 frames. Not saying that frames make a difference with me, but on PC, it's not even running at 60 frames per second. And I don't see why it can't run at 60 frames per second, given that that's the standard nowadays. And with this being like a low end game, why can't you push it at that? It's just so many things wrong with this game. Ninja Turtles. I'm not, it's not like I wanted to have an extravagant storyline or anything like that, or a gripping storyline. That's not what you play Ninja Turtles for. But it's not what. No, I'm totally disappointed with this game. Completely disappointed. And this is coming from a hardcore TMNT, Eastman and Laird's, all different variations of Turtles fan. Even the IDW comments, and you can tell like IDW had the influence with the designs. Now the character designs are spot on. I love them. I love the way they did Bebop and Rocksteady, Armagon, all of them. But the gameplay is just too over the top. It's not even. You can't even get a gist of what you're doing because there's so much going on. And it's not me. It's not because I'm old or anything like that. It's just all over the place. It's just all over the place. And I love ADHD games, but
right.
I don't know.
I have a theory in regards to Platinum Games, and I think because this is like their second miss in such a short time span, because Star Fox, the one that they put out for the Nintendo Wii U, is not doing so hot. It's the lowest selling Star Fox in Nintendo history. And I have a theory in regards to Platinum Games, and that theory is that they do better when they're working on their own IPs as opposed to like other people's IPs and licensed IPs, because when they're working on other people's stuff, they have to kind of be in a box, restrained. Like there are certain things that they can and can't do out of respect to those IPs that the creators would not allow them to do.
So, not to interject, but you think that this is what I was thinking, because you know what? I looked at like the first time I booted up the game, and I did like a launch day on it. Game day launch.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that there was I had walked out the room while I walked out my office, and I came back in. But then when I played it again, I saw that Nickelodeon had something to do with it. So do you think like with them being held by the restraints of Nickelodeon, like that probably like, tone, like, I don't know, just made it more mundane, or just like took away their creative, like
I believe that it had to be tone, like, because Nickelodeon owns the license for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles right now. So I believe that they had to, like, they couldn't like go full bore like with the original Brett Laird series back in the like early 1980s. They couldn't do it like that.
I wasn't looking for that. I was just looking for a good action beat 'em up, because if you ever played Transformers Devastation, and I was skeptical about that, especially when I saw like the cell shaded graphics and everything back when they were, I think, advertising that at like was it E3? It was one of the E3s. I think they advertised it. They just gave like a quick overview, and I said, this is going to be horrible. I played that game. I could not put it down. It was just that wonderful, that well made, and it definitely had the nostalgia aspect going on with it, because like I felt like I was actually watching an episode of like classic G1 Transformers. You know what I mean?
Right. And I played it, and I loved Transformers Devastation. Like, I watched and New Gaming Order member Alex Lexus play it, and he sold me on it, and I got it, and I loved it. But I think the problem does also lie in that Nickelodeon owns the license to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles right now, so they couldn't, like, if you've watched the Nickelodeon series, it's not bad.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
But it's not like even the 2003 series that was shown on Fox was kind of gritty at times and kind of serious.
Right. So, I actually enjoyed that series, because not to mention the artwork was fantastic on there. The artwork and animation was fantastic on there. But yeah, as you stated, it was a very gritty and borderline dark story. You know what I mean?
Right. That was closer to what Laird had originally envisioned
Right.
for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles television series, but uh, I do think that that Nickelodeon, the license held it back from what you're saying, because you can't get too serious, because this was intended, as is the Nickelodeon series, as a primarily 8 to like 12-year-old cartoon series, and they wouldn't get some of the gritty themes that Turtles has been traditionally known for. So we're gonna move on from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we're gonna dive into some more controversy. In case you've been living under a rock and a cave in some remote corner of the world, Ghostbusters 2016 is back at it again. They released the second trailer, but before that, James Rolfe, who is also known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, put up a video explaining why he's not going to do a Ghostbusters review. And his points were very well articulated. He wasn't angry in the video. He wasn't condescending. And at no point did he bring up that he wasn't going to watch or review the movie because of the all-female lead cast. But due to Oswald Patton, I'm going to blame some of this on his wife recently dying. His wife recently had some kind of involvement in the movie, be it a cameo or she helped write it. Due to her involvement in the movie, he lashed out at James Rolfe on Twitter, and subsequently James Rolfe was essentially destroyed by various internet blogs like the Daily Dot, BuzzFeed, Washington Post, calling him a man baby and misogynistic and sexist. And if you follow James Rolfe via his Angry Video Game Nerd channel and videos, and even on his own website, cinemassacre.com, you would know, like, misogynistic and sexist is like the very last thing that this person is like, I've met him at various conventions, and the dude is very soft spoken. He's very cool.
Oh yeah.
Dude has a wife and a daughter, and he's about the most down to earth person that you can possibly meet. But again, like, these people want to make up these things because Sony is pushing, and the director Paul Feig is pushing a narrative that if you're not a fan of the new Ghostbusters, you're misogynistic and sexist because of the all-female lead cast. And having seen both of the trailers, I'll admit the second trailer is a lot better than the first, because the second trailer is a lot better cut.
Right.
But it is still bad, especially Leslie Jones's character, because in the attempt to make like a positive female, strong, independent, female-centric Ghostbusters team, Leslie Jones's character comes across as the stereotypical black woman in a comedy. And I'm talking about loud, sassy, overbearing, over-religious, brings nothing to the proceedings other than her street smarts. And lastly, she appears as the stereotypical magic Negro character. Like, she brings nothing to the table but her ability to help white people in peril. And it just flies in the face of everything that Ghostbusters was. Like, Paul Feig and Sony did not understand what Ghostbusters was. Like, Ghostbusters, originally, it could have been a straight horror movie if it wanted to. The thing that made Ghostbusters stand out was that it was the traditional horror movie, but with comedic actors acting in non-traditional horror movie manners. And people were like, well, why are you coming down on Leslie Jones so much? I remember my mom, like, she's a huge fan of Ernie Hudson, and Ernie Hudson plays Winston Zeddemore in the original Ghostbusters movies and in the Ghostbusters cartoon series.
Right.
And Ernie Hudson, even though he wasn't a scientist like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis's characters, he still brought something to the table in that he was the more worldly of the three. Like the other three lived their lives in academia, whereas he lived life outside of academia. He was in the military. He had fought in the Vietnam War, so he had combat experience.
Right.
And even though he wasn't a scientist, he was an educated person in that he had a PhD in history. So he brought his own skill set to the table. And I remember my mom called me after she saw the first trailer, and she said they turned Winston into a loud black woman.
Yeah.
And that's the controversy that Sony has brought up. They're hoping to get hardcore feminists to support this movie because they know this movie's going to be bad based on its merit. So rather than promote the movie on its merit, they're trying to use controversy to sell the movie. Like, okay, if you're not liking this, you're automatically a sexist and a misogynist. And because Sony has been caught taking down the more well-crafted dissenting opinions in regards to the movie off the official trailers and leaving up the more sexist and misogynistic comments so they can point like, see, misogyny is what's driving the hate behind this, not legit reasons. And it's just shame on Sony for that. Seriously.
I agree. See, now me, it doesn't bother me about the all-female cast or, whether it is or not, because I followed a lot of the the Ghostbuster publications and the IDW comics, so on and so forth, to where there have been female Ghostbusters. I mean, because in the books, I mean, like they even depict them and draw like the original cast members as old. You know what I mean? And like they pass down the mantle. Even if you played like the old Ghostbusters video game that was on the PS3 and Xbox 360, they were training new Ghostbusters.
Like even in the 80s cartoon series and the subsequent Extreme Ghostbusters, when they passed the torch, there was a different diverse cast of Ghostbusters, including a female Ghostbuster.
Right.
Nobody flipped shit over that.
What where I think they really messed up at, where Paul Feig really messed up at, was when he his name is Paul Feig, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Instead of saying it's a reboot, he should have just done a continuation. It makes a big difference. Everyone was complaining about that on Twitter. It was like, how can you reboot? See, everything doesn't need to be rebooted. You can just extend it or just I don't know. The best thing to do if you are going to try to, I would say, reinvent the wheel with certain genres, certain storylines, certain characters, you should just extend upon them. Because if you try to rewrite the core elements of that character, you're going to ruin everything. And that's where I think he messed up at. Because I initially remember when he first put out like a little snippet of it, I think it was like 2 years ago, he said a continuation. He said it was a continuation. And I was all for it. Because you can't recreate such greatness as the original Ghostbusters. I love Ghostbusters. But I'm also excited to see what they're going to do with this new cast of Ghostbusters. But I'm one of those individuals. I'll just see it first and then I'll give my opinion. I do sometimes have my have a unbiased opinion, or sometimes I may have a biased opinion beforehand. As with TMNT, the first one, Michael Bay, but we won't get into that. But you know what I'm saying?
Michael Bay made a TMNT movie? Did he? Really?
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, he did the first one.
I don't remember that. I really don't.
Trust me, please don't go find that garbage. It's horrible. You will instantly like send a bomb to him or something like that. It was horrible.
But yeah, it's like here's the problem. I agree with you that it should, like, if he wasn't gonna use the original cast, he should have at least acknowledged that it was in the same universe.
Right, exactly.
Because here's the thing, Ghostbusters, like, people who were born between 1970 and 1985,
yes,
they grew up with this series, so it's not like we're old as fuck and don't remember this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, Ghostbusters, certain things like Ghostbusters, I mean, Goonies, certain things are iconic. If you're going to build upon them, you can't reboot them.
At
You
least
can't.
make, at the very least, have it take place in the same universe and
Exactly.
acknowledge what came before, even if you don't show the characters that you're building upon. Just acknowledge that they exist.
And I mean, another thing too, a lot of people are upset because he's not even giving homage to like Harold Ramis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like that, like Ghostbusters. For a lot of people who don't know, that's Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis's
Yes.
baby.
Yep. Exactly. And you do know he didn't expect that film to go nowhere. It was actually supposed to be, from what I understand, he said it was going to be a skit, and then like they decided to make it into a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like he expected it to be like a one-off because he
Exactly.
was going to use the proceeds from that movie to fund something else.
Exactly. He did not expect that film to go with, like, to become as big as it did.
And here's another thing in regards to Ghostbusters, like people want to say like, oh, people are down on it because it's a female cast, and it's not that it's a female cast. A lot of people want to say like, oh, it's a female cast of a beloved series. Nobody would have an issue with the female cast if the comedy feels forced. You know, from what I've seen in the trailers, everything feels like stereotypical
Yeah.
humor, like
Yeah.
Kristen Wiig licking the 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 gun, and
Yeah.
Leslie Jones saying, "I don't know if this is a woman thing or
Yeah.
a black
That
thing.
right there. I
I'm
was like,
mad." I'm
oh,
like,
come on.
really?
I was like, please don't.
Like, and you know how you laugh, but you do that nervous. I'm embarrassed for you laugh.
Exactly.
That's how I, like, it wasn't funny in that regard. It was like so,
Yeah.
but moving on from Ghostbusters, we're gonna hit the last topic before we dip on out of here. And man, I want to give you big props for coming through on this for me. And that, talking about Doom, man.
Oh,
Doom is just
oh my God, I love that game. I felt like I was back in the '90s, just with better graphics.
exactly like
You know what I'm
people,
saying?
like
I
it
loved
felt
it.
like a classic Doom game. It felt like, it doesn't feel like a corridor shooter. It, like, even though it's a little bit more linear than I would expect it to be, you still
Right.
have the wide open, having to go from one part of the map to another part of the map and back again to complete different objectives before you can move on. So it's not a totally wholly linear progression system, but man, and I love how it maintains a 60 frames per second clip to make you feel like it's more intense and it's more
Exactly. And I was
action driven.
surprised. I was surprised with the speed that that game goes at. Not to mention, it gets faster when you get like power ups, so on and so forth. It didn't drop any frames. I didn't see any. I don't know. I don't know how it is. Have you played it on PC? Correct.
Yeah.
How? I mean, did it start to drop any frames or anything like that?
Uh, a little bit in the more intense situations, but it didn't drop below like 45, 50 frames.
Right,
So
right.
it,
Which is not bad because I've seen games with less activity start dropping frames. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. But man, Doom, it just feels like everything that a Doom game should have been. Like, forget Doom 3.
Exactly. Nobody needs a Doom is an action horror title. It's not a horror title. It's an action horror. That means it's supposed to be fast. It's supposed to keep moving, high energy. You know what I mean?
And that's what it does. It's like you're not, it's like, it's not like Halo or Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of the first person shooters that have come out within the last 10 to 15 years, where you move on to one arena, you stop and you shoot, and everything's going on at a nice steady clip, but it's not frantic and it's not adrenaline pumping, and it's not like, you don't feel like you're in constant danger. In Doom, you feel like you're in constant danger. Like, things are just coming left, right, up, down.
Oh my God. You know what? And it was all about classic. You have to understand, Mr. Aaron, and I mean, I think I can speak on, I speak of both of us when I say this. We come from that era where we were arcade people, where we had to, it was all about reflexes, how fast you can, pretty much like assess the situation and just adapt to it and deal with the enemy at hand. I mean, it's, to me, I felt it was a breath of fresh air within gaming.
I honestly think this
It
is
made me feel like I was back in an arcade. It really did.
honestly think
Or
this
sitting
will
down at
be
my PC playing like something that was just mindless, and it's mindless arcade shooting fun.
indeed, and honestly think this is going to be a candidate for game of the year because it's a even though it's a throwback in terms of gameplay style, it's just fun. And that's
Exactly.
what games need to be these days. They need to stop worrying
Exactly.
about being technical marvel and just focus on being fun. And I think this is what Doom gets right in spades, and that is just pure outright fun.
That's why when I picked it up, I said, you gotta check this out. You gotta check this out. This is like a breath of fresh air. And I mean, I'm not saying you would sit there and play it for hours upon hours, but you'll definitely go back to it, pick it up again and just start playing it, then put it down and pick it back up again. It's one of those type of games.
I,
It's
I
definitely fun.
I'll tell you this much, man. Like it's made me lose a lot of sleep in the past 2 weeks because like it's one of those games you can play and you'll forget how much time you spent playing it, and you'll
Right.
look up and it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, "Fuck, I gotta go to work the next day."
Yep.
But man, Doom, Bethesda software knocked it right out the park.
Yeah. And I agree with you. They should win Game of the Year with this one. And I'm not a big FPS fan anyway. I'm not big in first person shooters, but that right there, man, I haven't had that much fun in gaming in a while. And I'm always pretty much complaining like, oh, I'm bored. Oh, nothing's keeping my attention anymore. That kept my attention. That definitely woke me up again. It made me feel like, made me feel like the old days of arcade gaming, PC gaming, having fun, just pure having fun. You know what I mean?
And on to a bit of a last news blurb. Yesterday, for Killer Instinct Season 3, Gargos was released. And man, Gargos is fun. Dude, he it's one of those characters that Killer Instinct gets totally right. And I recommend that if you don't have Killer Instinct Season 3, you go out and get it because Season 3 characters are definitely fun. And coming in with Gargos being essentially a boss character, dude is just tons and tons of fun to play as, and even fun to fight as because, well, fun to fight against because it's interesting to see the fighting style he employs because he has punches that come through portals and he can sick demons on you and whatnot. So I definitely recommend that if you don't have Killer Instinct, get it and play it.
Well, you know what? And I know we got to end the show soon, but I when I initially started playing Killer Instinct from the beginning, when like it was when it was launched on Xbox One,
Hmm.
I love it. I loved it, but I just got sidetracked because I'm a big Mortal Kombat fan and I stopped playing it. But one thing I can say with Killer Instinct, it is a balanced fighting game when you really start understanding the mechanics of it. It's a very balanced fighting game in a sense where if you read your opponent correctly, it's not like where like say for instance like Marvel versus Capcom 3 or certain like in Street Fighter 4, like if you smother the person, you're just gonna win. No, I've seen people who knew like bread and butter combos totally get knocked out of that combo and their fight just totally reverses because the person was able to read them. You know what I mean? What I like about Killer Instinct, to me, if you have to change it up, it's a matter of playing chess, just like Street Fighter 3 was. You can't just go in being ultra aggressive and just win. You know what I mean? Or just knowing this infinite combo and just win. Because I've seen people get knocked out of combos and were winning the fight, and then like because they did the combo break and the person read them, oh wow, the tide of battle just changed. But I don't know, that's just me. That's my opinion about Killer Instinct. I think it's a very well made fighting game.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on all these topics at hand, Dene. And before we get on out of here, go ahead and plug your store and plug your new Twitch stream that you've been so graciously sharing with everybody on YouTube and Facebook.
Well, basically what I'm doing right now is just rebuilding the brand and everything like that, and I'm trying to offer more content. So with that, I instituted the Twitch stream, the YouTube channel, along with partners as yourself and New Gaming Order, to where in which we are able to provide like quality gaming content, sweepstakes, prizes, so on and so forth. So, just follow us, give us a follow, and it should be in the description of this video. And hey, you can not only join in or sometimes join on the show, but like you'll have chance to win prizes, sweepstakes, tickets, everything. Not to mention you'll get quality content from our friend here from free play mode.
Free play mode. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Dene. You were always welcome.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Always a pleasure to be here.
And the New Gaming Order podcast is going on right now, so you might hear me on that today as well. So tune into that on the New Gaming Order Twitch stream as well as their YouTube channel. This is Dave from the Free Play Mode signing off. Hoping you have a good afternoon and the rest of the day and Memorial Day weekend. If you got a pool, jump in it because it's going to be hotter than a motherfucker.
Yeah, man.
Peace, folks. We're out.